In the past week, I've put several hours into Oblivion Remastered, and I wanted to take this opportunity to talk a bit about some of the changes made to this new version. I thought this video could be fun for people who are looking for some more information on the game, and are maybe curious just how much it differs from the original. To start this off, let's go over some basics. Oblivion Remastered is available now for PC, Xbox Series S and X, and PlayStation 5. Being a Microsoft-published game, it's also available on Game Pass for both PC and Xbox systems. The standard version of the game comes in at $50 USD, which includes the original base game, the two big DLCs, Knights of the Nine and Shivering Isles, as well as all those minor add-ons. And yes, that does include horse armor. The digital deluxe version of the game comes in at $60 USD, including everything you see in the standard version, as well as a couple new quests, giving us 2 new armor and weapon sets, along with 2 new horse armors, along with a digital art book and the game's soundtrack. I'm playing on a deluxe copy of the game, courtesy of my friends at Bethesda. And being a modern game, of course this comes in at almost 120 gigabytes. Oblivion Remastered uses a paired engine system, with the original Gamebryo engine handling a lot of the actual game, including quests, mechanics, and more. The upgraded graphics come instead from the second engine in use, that being Unreal Engine 5. Because of this, every asset you see, including NPCs, armor, weapons, everything, had to be redesigned and rebuilt in Unreal. And while the game is using the original voice lines, they did have some new lines recorded as well. That way there might be a little more variation among NPCs. And there were new lines recorded for the 2 quests included in the deluxe edition, which I was really happy to see. Throughout the video today, you'll see some side-by-side comparisons, going over some of the graphical changes. That way, you can really see for yourself just how much has changed. I recorded the original Oblivion on PC, with no mods of any sort, and all graphics maxed out as much as they could be. For the remaster, I'm playing on PC with most settings on Ultra, but a couple things turned down to high. I'll also include the PC Recs on screen here. That way, you can get an idea of where you might fit into that. Unreal 5 isn't best known for its performance, or for open world games either, which is definitely something to keep in mind. The game's opening cutscene is nearly shot for shot with the original, with the changes here being very minor. We get a slightly different shot of the Daedra by the siege engine, and we don't have the giant guard walking through the Imperial City. Oblivion's intro is one of my favorites in gaming, so I'm really glad that they didn't change it all that much. Character creation does have a couple changes. The original game had different stats based on gender, with female characters having higher personality or willpower, but they often had lower strength or endurance. The remaster instead gives us a new origin option, in which you'll determine what region your character would be from based on their race. This will instead decide which of those stat buffs and debuffs you get. For instance, Imperials choose between the Nibene or Colovian regions, Nords choose from Eastern or Western Skyrim, Dark Elves choose between Vardenfell and the mainland, and so on. One addition in the remaster is the inclusion of facial hair, something that we didn't really have in the original at all, minus getting to change some stubble color. And yes, you can absolutely make terrifying, ugly characters the same way that you did in the original. For me, it's still taken some time to get used to the way that the characters look in this, but they did manage to make many NPCs look weird, which is still keeping in line with Oblivion. After all, I think some characters look really good. Owen and Isabel in the arena, I think, got a glow up, as did Lucy and LeChance. The orcs look really monstrous, and the Grey Prince in particular is not a pretty sight. It is weird to me seeing some of the characters in this style, but funny enough, I think the style would work really well if the rumored Fallout 3 remaster were to happen, as it actually feels reminiscent of Fallout 1 and 2's dialogue scenes. Characters are much more expressive, not just in their facial animation, but they really move around much more, and have significantly more body language. We do keep the traditional dialogue menu for the most part, with that classic zoom in on the character that we're speaking with. However, if you're not a fan of that, you can actually disable it in the settings. The loading screens are quite different, the originals being much more flat, with screenshots of the game made up to look like they were hand-drawn. For the remaster, we instead get a 3D model of a drawing board, which is nice because it feels like a more in-universe take on the original loading screen look. The UI has undergone several changes. On PC, you have a bit more access. Hitting I opens your inventory, hitting M opens your map, and I rebound J to open my journal. I think the default keybind for that was F6. To me, this is a really important quality of life addition. The map takes up the entire screen, as opposed to only taking up part of it like in the original, and you now have the ability to zoom in and out, making it much easier to navigate. At first glance, it might not look like the game still has a local map, but it does, and it can be accessed by zooming all the way in. But I do wish that they had given us a way to zoom in and out on the local map though. The player HUD is much more reminiscent to Skyrim, with the compass now being at the top of the screen, and your 3 attribute bars being spread across the bottom, as opposed to being on top of one another in the left-hand corner. And your health, fatigue, and magicka bars will fade away when they're at full. For the remaster, they've done away with the difficulty slider, and instead implemented a similar set of difficulties to Skyrim, with the 5 presets being Novice, Apprentice, Adept, Expert, and Master. The game is set to Adept by default. And right now, one critique that I'm seeing is that bumping the difficulty up to Expert makes enemies unrealistically tanky, with many players hoping that there might be a patch to address the difficulty curve. Gameplay-wise, there's a few changes here, which I think goes a long way in making this remaster a bit more accessible than the original game. One thing I noticed immediately was the ability to sprint, a feature that Bethesda had first added in Skyrim. This does drain your fatigue, so you want to keep an eye on that as all attacks, light and heavy, also rely on this attribute. I didn't immediately notice a difference in combat, but as I played more and even went back to the original Oblivion, I noticed that it had been improved upon. Many attacks did feel a bit more impactful, with archery in particular feeling much better. OG Oblivion combat felt a bit floaty at times, and I feel like they definitely fixed it in this remaster. One thing that I noticed is that when using a bow and arrow while sneaking, enemies don't seem to detect you at all if you miss, even if the arrow lands right next to them. I'm assuming this is an unintentional bug. While the game still has a class system, with you choosing your class or making your own, the way in which you level has been adjusted. Raising your major skills will give you much more progress towards your next level, but now, raising your minor skills will count towards leveling up as well, just at a lower rate by comparison. This does help to address one of the main critiques about the original, in which players had to very carefully and deliberately choose when to raise their major skills. That way, they didn't wind up over-leveled but underprepared, as not enough of their minor skills would have been raised, making them too weak against enemies as they scaled to your level. In essence, this creates something of a hybrid leveling system, something between Oblivion and Skyrim, and honestly, it's something that I'd like to see them consider for the Elder Scrolls 6. Once you've reached a new level, you will still need to sleep, after which you'll be able to choose 3 attributes to raise, with 12 virtue points to spend across the 3. There's a flat rate of 1 virtue to level any attribute, with the exception of luck, which instead requires 4 virtue per level. One new spell that was added to the remaster is Clairvoyance, which is given to you right from the start, and when cast, will create a temporary shimmering trail towards your marked objective. When I first started playing, I thought it was a bit weird to have, and to be prompted to use it in the Imperial City prison, given that it's a fairly linear dungeon. But it's really useful when trying to find your way out of some dungeons, especially Ayleid Ruins. I, for one, get lost in them all the time. Now, let's talk a bit more about the graphics. I've already talked about characters and NPCs, but to me, where the remaster really shines is in its environments, its lighting, and so on. Interiors and dungeons are absolutely incredible. Going through the Imperial City prison, other Ayleid ruins, and old Imperial forts, it's all just stunning. The new models and textures really help to bring these dungeons to life. Some of them might feel a bit darker than their original counterparts, so having something like Night Eye can really come in handy when exploring. What really blew me away, however, were the Oblivion gates and their various planes. Each gate now shows an image of its interior. Obviously, it's just a rendered 2D image, but it gives this effect of looking through the portal into Oblivion itself. Like many, I often got tired of the Oblivion planes by the end of each and every playthrough, but so far I find myself going out of my way to go through them because of how much better they look graphically. They feel so much darker and much more sinister. The textures in the sigil towers are especially impressive, as those red, fleshy ramps in the original looked like they could have just been fruit roll-ups. Going through Oblivion now makes me feel like I'm playing Doom, but in the Elder Scrolls. And I guess it's a good way to prep for Doom: The Dark Ages, which is coming out soon. The open world is really impressive, with one of the first things I noticed being the much higher render distance. I could see Frostcrag Spire from Cloud Ruler Temple, and even from the bridge between Way and the Imperial City. The color palette for the game isn't as saturated as the original, which is one thing that some people miss. Personally, I really like how the remaster looks. The Imperial City remains one of my favorite places to walk around, especially now in this new and improved style. And for me, one of the best visual upgrades here is magic, with spells having a lot more visual flair and effects, making them look both brand new and beautiful. One graphical hiccup that I noticed is that you can see a bit of the models and textures popping in after loading into the open world. And UI-wise, I noticed that the game isn't consistent in displaying your equipped weapons in your inventory menu. And now, a quick note on modding. Bethesda has already confirmed that they have no plans to provide native modding support for Oblivion Remastered, which I think it makes sense, especially given the paired engine system. Unreal has never really been known for having great mod support. That being said, while there won't be an in-game mod menu, console mods, official modding tools, and so on, Elder Scrolls modders like a challenge. Already, the remaster has received a script extender, as well as its own page on the Nexus. So far, there's a lot of bug fixes, HUD adjustments, and some retextures. And of course, the most important mod of all. Given that we won't get official modding tools, there may be some limitations in what mods we can expect. So, full DLC-size mods are a bit less likely. Although, some mod authors are already looking to see how easy it would be to port quest mods from the original game over to the remaster. Given that the game is only a week out from release, a lot of these things are still being figured out. Personally, I'm not expecting to see any big new quest mods for the remaster, but I also don't mind that when we're talking about a remaster either. But suffice it to say, this is already a smash hit. Oblivion Remastered peaked at over 160,000 concurrent players on Steam in its first day, and that's with a shadow drop in the middle of the work week during business hours. And that's not even counting how many people are playing on Xbox, on PlayStation, or even on PC via Game Pass. A few days after its release, Bethesda said that over 4 million people have already started playing. I think this remaster has a pretty wide audience. It's bringing longtime fans of the Elder Scrolls back into the series, and it gives Oblivion fans a new way to play the game that they love. At the same time, it's giving a lot of people who have never played Oblivion an easier way to jump in. Not everyone's interested in going back to the original 2006 game. I've talked to so many people who didn't really have any interest in going back to the original, but were super excited to jump into this. And they're all loving it. And I, for one, am really happy to be back in Cyrodiil. But that's gonna be all for today. As always, thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the Patreon or the YouTube memberships, both of which get access to my official Discord server, as well as early access to most new videos. And make sure to check out the streams at twitch.tv/0periodproductions. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.